G'day and welcome back. This week I have two radios essentially the same, but one's branded Mullard and the other one is a Philips, but essentially the same radio. The Philips branded one is called a Town & Country. I'm not sure if they call the Mullard a Town & Country as well, but they're the same radio. They're both battery and electric, so they run off mains or batteries. These both belong to a gentleman I met up with in Sydney. He had contacted me and said he had the two radios, they need aligning. I told him I was going to be in Sydney shortly, so if you wanted to, you could bring him around. I'll bring some equipment, we'll do the alignment. He showed up with the radios and unfortunately neither of them worked. I said, look, I'll take him home, I'll fix them up and I'll mail them back to him, or when I go back to Sydney I can give them back to him. So that's what we're going to do today. I think I'll start with the Mullard one and we'll see what's wrong with that. Here's the Mullard one, and both of them have this little flap on the top, and that provides power to the set. That's tuning and that's volume. There's a message on the end there, on-off switch and shutter combined. And the next bit says to close fully when not listening. Right. Here's the back. I assume that's where a power cord would come out if you're using the AC power. A Mullard logo badge, and here's where the power plugs in. Oh no, that's the power, isn't it? So that must be an antenna for an antenna. So the power goes in there, of course. There's two screws on the bottom. I'll open the back. There it is. There's the cord, and he's also thrown in a load of valves. These are 1.5 volt battery valves, and up the top is a 6V4 for the rectifier when you're running it off mains. I'm pretty sure this is a radio that had absolutely no noise at all. There's no hum, no crackle. And these valves are series string, so there's a good chance that one of those is open filament or there's something wrong with the wiring. I think what I'll do is I'll put some power on it and we'll just see what it does. Before I put power on it, I will take this little cover off to make sure there's nothing amiss inside. This is somebody else's work, so just make sure it's going to be okay. Just having a look around. Looks quite neat actually. It's very, very well done. I remember now he told me he restuffed these aluminium capacitors here, so he's done more than I would do. It looks fine. I can't see any obvious things. There's no bulging components or anything. I've got the little flap up. The volume is on full, so I'll put some power on. Yeah, so it's drawing power. Now it's going to heat this 6V4, so it'll take a minute to come on. It is making a noise. Ah, how about that? Or maybe the other one was the one that doesn't make a noise. Well, that's working. Very noisy. Let's turn the volume control. Maybe I turned it all the way down. Ah, there's some noise there. Okay. I'll try tuning it. Here's the knob on the front. There's nothing there. I think what I need to do is pull all those valves out, clean the bases up, and we'll try again. So I'll do that, I'll come back. I'll just show you how I'm going to clean the bases. I've taken this valve out, it's a 1T4, it's being used as an RF stage here, so this must have a triple stage capacitor, tuning capacitor. I've taken that out. I can see the pins are a little bit bent there. They don't look too bad, a little bit discoloured. I'll clean those up with a brush and some deoxit. For the base itself, the socket, I have a dental pick here, a bit of deoxit in a cup, and I'll go around and clean each socket. This dental pick's a little bit big for these, I might get a small one. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Just run it in and out a few times and that'll clean those up. I'll do the rest of them. Also check and make sure the valves are the correct valves in the right socket. Sometimes people get them mixed up. I know I do. I've done it a number of times. So I'll just make sure they're right. I'll come back when it's all done. I've just come back a bit early. I've cleaned these two valves here and they're still the same. I've put power on it. It's on full volts. That one's not so bad, and it still makes a noise. So I think I need to get in there and tighten the sockets underneath. So I'll do that. I'm going to have to take it out of the case. They're a pain to take out. You've got to unsolder the antenna. Leave it with me. I'll try and get it out. I have the chassis out. It's on my bench, and I've just gone through and cleaned these again. But what I think is going on is these little sockets have spread apart, and I'll just see if I can just kind of push them together. You can't get to anything at the bottom. There's no access to these. So I've just got a little pointy podgery thing here, and I hope I can just push them together. They're very, very soft, so it's no wonder they're not making contact. So anyway, I'll do the best I can. I might have to get something a bit bent so I can get in there to do the rest. Alright, here's the chassis. I put those two valves in. Put some power on. I cleaned both of those and retensioned both of those sockets. We'll see if that sorts that out. The radio will not work now because I've disconnected the wires going to the loop antennas inside the case. So it won't work, but we can see if we're on the way to fixing these. That's better. Alright, okay. I'll do the other three here and we'll come back and see if we can get it to work. I've cleaned these remaining valves. I've connected the antenna wire, you can see in the corner here. I've connected it onto the antenna inside the radio. So we'll see what happens. It's not making any noise at all now. It's not working at all. 20 watts there, so something's going on. Oh gosh. I'm not putting my finger in there. I'll use a knitting needle. There's the 3V4, that's the output valve. It's not doing anything. Turn it off. I've put it back on. I cycled this switch a few times and I think this puts power onto the filaments and to the main chassis on separate switches. So maybe one of the switches didn't quite make it. We didn't have any filament voltage. So it's back to working again. None of the valves, that makes a bit of noise there. None of the valves are clicking anymore. When I was playing with this valve, I noticed it's a bit microphonic. Yeah, you won't be able to hear that. But it's still not going to work. Alright, so let's find out why it's not working. I'll do a bit of troubleshooting. If I touch that, I should get a buzz. I don't think that one. I think it's this one. I should get a buzz as well. So that means the volume pot is working and the amp's working. I've just got the antenna here in the end. That's kind of getting through. This is the base of the RF valve. So that is part of that aerial here, which you can see, I think. That wire there, that goes off the aerial in the case. This is the antenna coil, and that goes off into the grid of the mixer here, or converter, and this one's the oscillator coil. I've got my oscilloscope here with a little coil on the bottom, and we'll see if we can find a oscillator signal, and there doesn't appear to be anything there at all. Right, so the next thing to do is check the voltages on that valve. I've got the radio sitting on its back now. I've got my multimeter attached. We can check some voltages. Now, the thing checking voltages, it also will make noises as it goes down the line. It'll crackle. So that's also a way of tracing the signal. This is the mixer. I think that one's the plate. It should have 90 odd volts on it, and you can hear it's working. This is the screen. It's supposed to be about 45 or something or other. This one's the RF valve. So we know that the signal's getting through there. There's the gap, so that's one. So this should be the... Wow. That's actually trying to receive there. Well, we've got 90 something volts there, 95. And this is the screen for it. That's got, what's that, nearly 40. I do have the little schematic for the pin out on the valve. The grid is pin 6. So that's 7, so this will be 6. Nothing there. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. So the valve? Maybe the valve's not working. I'll see if I can get another valve. I've found another valve in a radio that's on the floor next to me. I've put that valve in. It's warmed up. There's the plate again, so that's crackling. There's the grid. Nothing. Still nothing. I've changed the valve. I've got power back on and it's warmed up. I'll just check that grid again. And now it's getting through. So the valve's working. These first two must have been duds. And 95 there. We'll see what's on the screen. That was the plate. And we've got 34. I think that's about right. I can't quite remember what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be around 30 somewhere. So, now I haven't got an antenna really. Oh, that's actually tuning. It's picking up the cameras. I've got the signal generator on. It's on the higher frequency, 455. If I touch that on that grid, we'll see if it comes through. It does. Now I've got the case here. There's an external antenna input on there. If I touch that, okay. So what I know now is the 455 is getting through the entire radio, through the antenna, all the way through. The 455 IF frequency does not rely on the oscillator. It just puts the 455 through. So my guess is the local oscillator still is not working. Okay, seeing that valve was no good, I'll get a new 1R5. That's the mixer valve. I'll put that in and see what happens. I replaced that valve, didn't make any difference, so I've put the original one back. On the schematic here, there's the mixer valve. That's the local oscillator, all this bit here. And this grid 1, they've got connected into the local oscillator. So there's grid 1 there, pin 4, and it goes up to that coil there, which is correct, into that coil. It then goes to a capacitor, which is that one there. So down there, onto the capacitor, and that goes to ground. It has a trimmer capacitor, which is around here, and I can see that that's been wound right down. It's open. I noticed that before, but I didn't worry about it. There's another wire here that goes off to the tuning capacitor, and that naturally goes to ground. So that's okay. On the other side of that coil, it goes off to a resistor. Where is it? There. And that goes off to the pin 7 of the same valve there, and that's the, well, it's the heater and cathode in one. So everything seems to be there. I can see the little wires here, they seem to be connected. I'll put some power on again. I'll just power it up. Now I can wind that in. It's not going to make any difference. You know, it's a trimmer capacitor. Just means it's going to move around the dial a bit. Where's the, I don't know where the wire is to that. I think that's it there at the back. Is that the one there? Let me just prod that. Oh! Okay. I'm just trying to follow the wire going to this capacitor, and it started working. Well, making more noise. That's the wire I'm playing with, and I just moved it a bit. That's not going to do it. Have a bit of dowel here. See if I can move that. Permanently. No. I wonder what's wrong with it. Try knitting that. No, it doesn't want to. Is it a bad solder? I wonder if it's a bad solder up there. I'll push that wire again. Right. That's open. There we go, and some sort of short, yeah. I've taken power off. I've got my soldering iron ready. I'll dismantle this joint. We'll see what's going on. Alright, I'll see if it still has a short there. And it does. It's a dead short. Take that little cap, wind that out. Yeah, that's nothing to do with that. Just try and wobble that. It's changing. What if I move the wire around? Nope, nothing's happening. It should be open, like it should be OL. Like that. Manuel Caldeira had the same radio, and he had the same problem with this trimmer. He bent his out too.
I don't want to touch that. There's no high voltage there, but... Yes!
I'll solder it all back together. We'll see if it works. I've reconnected all that, put the meter back on, and look, it's shorted out again. Well, I think I'll have to just pull that apart and see what's going on. I've moved the oscillator coil out of the way. I want to get to the top there. That's the top of the capacitor, that honeycomb capacitor thing. So I can get the soldering iron in there now. And this should come out and bring the wire with it. There it is. It's pretty simple. One wire going all the way through. That had the cap on there engaged in the little fins there. This outer here, this part, is attached to the circuit through that wire that I unsoldered. So as I said, that's just one wire going all the way through, so that's okay. And we should take that off, and what we were getting was a short to that, and it's not shorting now. The cloth covering on here is intact, there was no shorts there. I don't know what it was doing. This is where it's mounted, it just goes through a hole that's in the center there. I wonder if it was touching here, might have been touching this valve base. Maybe that's what it was. I'll put it all back together, make sure everything's clear, and we'll try again. I've put everything back together, and I'll just connect the lead here, and there's no short, so 137 is what it was before I reconnected this trimmer. I'll take that off, I'll put some power on, and there it is. I can actually hear a station. A lot of noise. If I lay the oscilloscope coil on here, there's the oscillator. So it's tuning stations. But it's not clear. Alright, maybe a problem with the antenna. Maybe I'll put the antenna straight into the radio. I've got the wires for the antenna here, so I'll disconnect the one that's going to the case antenna, the loop antenna. I'm not sure what happened if I go straight in here.
Possibly two homemade shotgun. Gotcha.
There it goes.
No way. Two, a bag bowl in company there with Mammal's Place, and still Janie Blue back in last.
So there it is.
30.9 for the first.
I won't get anything further up. Let's go back here. The strong one's down here somewhere. Alright, so there might be something wrong with the case antenna. I've got a capacitor in here. I'll go straight on the grid.
All this bullshit to us.
Now, you're a psychologist, not a lawyer, but do you...
Okay, so it's working. Have to get it off that. Okay, fantastic. I need to look at the loop antenna in the radio. That may be the problem. I've connected the radio's loop antenna back, and I've got my own loop antenna on the back here, and it's picking up okay.
And then I know Philip Clark's coming back on with another piece of budget analysis for you.
Not so bad. As with any radio with a self-contained antenna, it just picks up all the cameras, the computers, lights, everything, so it never really works all that well. Now, having said that, the loop antenna in here has another loop antenna that induces a signal if you put an external antenna. That didn't seem to be working very well, so maybe an issue there. I'll have to check all that out. Anyway, pretty happy the radio's now working. Let's have a look at this antenna. There are two loops. There's one in each side of the inside the Bakelite end caps. There's loop 1 or coil 1, and here's coil 2. They're going to ground. Over here is the auxiliary input, and that goes into a smaller coil to ground. So if you put an input into there, an antenna, it will conduct itself into a couple into the larger antenna winding. So I'll show you on the radio. Here's the case, and you can see an antenna in this side and an antenna in this side. And up the top here, two little terminals and provision for an external antenna. But if we look inside the terminals there, they're not connected to anything. They're just terminals, nothing on them. There's a tag strip along here. These two here are the loop antenna from the other side coming through to this side. This one here is the little auxiliary loop that couples into the main loop, and it's not connected to anything. That's why the radio didn't work when I connected my mini whip antenna to those two little tabs. I've connected my mini whip to the little tabs inside there that are connected to that small loop antenna, and I've used a couple of clip leads to connect back to the antenna inside the case. Turn it up.
Generational theft. The federal government pushed ahead with its plan to overhaul tax perks used by property investors.
Perfect.
Labor says the changes to negative gearing.
I don't know why they're not connected. I checked the other radio, it's not connected on that either. I'm going to leave it disconnected. If the owner wants to connect the external antenna up, he can. They've left it off for some reason. I'm going to put all this back in the case. We'll do a bit of an alignment and that'll be it. I'll do a quick alignment check. I did play with this trimmer for sure. That's the one I took out. And this one looks like it's been moved. This is the RF trimmer for the RF stage. So that's the stage before the mixer. That's used to trim that. And this one is the oscillator trimmer. So that's done at the high end. So 38K, or 1500 I mean. There's the oscillator patter down there. That hasn't been touched. I'm not going to play with that if I don't have to. I've got the signal generator on 600 and I've put my loop antenna on the back here, so it's inducing the signal into this loop antenna. It's a bit hard to see the letters and numbers on here. This plastic's discoloured, but if you can see that ZL is right there. It's in blue down the bottom. I'll turn it up, and as I said, the generator's on 600. ZL is 600. So that's actually spot on there. That's perfect. I'll run it up to 3AK, which is 1500. I've changed the generator to 1500. 3AK. I do need to just trim this one. This one will trim the top of the end of the oscillator. Okay, that was a good guess. And this is the RF, so I'll adjust this one as well, that RF stage. Alright, that was pretty close. I'm just doing this by ear, I haven't got any instruments connected to it. There's another one down here for the antenna, you probably can't see it, but we've got to close the cover to adjust that, so I'll set up to do that. Here's the antenna trimmer here. You've got to do it with the back closed, so I'll close it over. And that's what that slot was for, to adjust the trimmer. I initially said it was for the power cord, and then I changed my mind. So that's what it's for, to adjust that trimmer. Alright, I've managed to find the trimmer with my screwdriver. I'll just adjust it. It's going down. It's going down. So it was perfect. It was spot on. Okay, that's it. I've done the alignment. I've disconnected my generator and I've attached the mini whip to the loop antenna there. We'll see if we can tune something in.
Delac on the inside of events, then came Debbie, got on the inside of Siragusa, Schnitzel missed and Berno low.
On the benefit of the fight.
Well, not a 5-minute competition. Yeah. I've got another year now, and this might be... It's not good.
Suzanne, thank you. Suzanne's in Gympie. Does that remind you?
Okay, that's working really well. That noise in the background, it's just because it's in the room here. If I took it outside, it would work fine. I edited the video footage and I noticed when I did this alignment at 3AK, I didn't quite have it on 3AK. I went back, set it up on 3AK 1500. I adjusted the oscillator trimmer, I adjusted the RF trimmer, and I adjusted the antenna trimmer. So it's all perfectly aligned now. Alright, that's one of them done. I still have the Phillips to do. This one's taken longer than I'd hoped, so the video's run too long. I'll do the Phillips in the next video. Hopefully not quite so much trouble as I had with this one. I hope you enjoyed following along, and I hope you can join me next time for my next radio adventure.